Hi again then guys, and welcome to the second to last episode of Tour of Japan, the review series for all of Gran Turismo's Super GT class GT300 and GT500 vehicles that are of course currently featured on the game's lineup. We have one more episode after this of course, and this is featuring the last GT-R that we are going to be featuring in the series. We've featured a strong selection of GT-Rs, of the R35 and the R34. The R35 overall though is by far one of the most popular GT500 cars, far more popular overall than the Skyline as a JGTC model for obvious reasons. We've said before in the series it's an incredibly strong all-round car, and in the case of this model, this is the 2008 Xanavi Nismo GT-R. It has some slightly different visual styling cues to some of the other teams. Obviously the livery itself is different, but it also has these little yellow detailing strips on the front and rear spoilers, which I personally quite like. I think that's a nice little touch. It kind of sets it apart from some of the others, because it is of course not the only red GT-R of this generation, as a racing model that is of course, so that does set it apart. As far as its performance though, which is of course the more important thing, it sits, probably not too surprisingly, at the same level as a couple of the other GT-Rs, namely the Impel GT-R and the Yellow Hat GT-R, both of which were, as we covered in their episodes, very good all-round models. So you get that 4.5 litre engine, as all of the R35s use. You get 928 horsepower, 668 foot-pounds of torque. It only weighs in at 1100 kilos. It sits at one of the highest PP levels of any GT500 car, 664, and produces 844 horsepower per tonne, and it costs exactly the same as all of the other R35 GT500 models, the stealth model notwithstanding. It costs 950,000 credits, so it's the same as the other GT-Rs, it's the same as the SC430s, it's the same as the NSXs. So, is this car genuinely different enough to tempt you away from the Yellow Hat or the Calsonic Impel versions? Well, overall, I would say probably no, to be completely honest. It's so similar that the cars pretty much break even. There are slight differences between them in terms of how the teams approach the cars, of course, but you can't really feel the majority of those differences on the game, to be completely honest. There may be a fractional difference between the handling and performance of the cars, but not really enough to genuinely notice to the naked eye. You'd have to really put it down to a stringent test to compare the two. Overall though, the fact that it is so similar does automatically mean it's a highly competitive model against those cars, and as we already said, those cars are already very good, as we saw previously in the series. So in other words, this car is a safe bet as far as GT500s go. If you're looking for a strong all-round machine that will do exactly what you need it to do when you need it to do it, the GT-R pretty much has you covered there. For top-end performance, it's pretty much the quickest of the mainstream GT500 cars, and for spec, it's also one of the highest. Many people would probably assume that it is the highest, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that. But funnily enough, the GT-R is actually not the strongest GT500 car in the game. I've saved that one for the final episode, episode 49. Unfortunate that we couldn't round it off to episode 50, but that's the way things are. But episode 49 is going to feature a vehicle which some of you guys may have been expecting, but I think quite a few of you may be surprised to see it in the series. And the final episode will feature a car which absolutely blows all of the other GT500 cars out of the water in terms of power, in terms of PP, in terms of horsepower per tonne, in terms of value for money, acceleration, top speed, and a number of other things. So some of you, as I said, may be able to guess what that car is, but I think for some of you it may be a surprise, and that's why I've saved it for the final episode. We've kept the best till last, and it really is a monster. It's not a stealth model, and it's not a base model. It's a completely unique model. So look forward to that final episode. Be sure that you tune in for that. But for now, the GT-R is a brilliant car. I mean, we've covered, what is it, 4 or 5 different variants of it in this series, just of the R35 generation. So to be completely honest, there's not that much more which can be said about the car. I've said most of what there is to say. It does over 240 miles per hour, has incredibly good acceleration, fantastic handling, tons of grip. Just look at how many people use this car. That tells you how good it is. You see this arguably more so, not necessarily in this exact spec, but this generation more so than pretty much any other GT500 car, apart from perhaps the Honda HSV 10. So if you're looking for a strong all-round machine, it's a safe bet to go for. So that's it for this episode. Be sure to tune in for the final episode, and as always, thanks for watching.